The Pay Trend Survey Committee confirms recommended pay hikes for civil servants after meeting with union representatives. The MTR blames a false alarm sent out by a monitoring device for yesterday's East Rail Line service disruption. And a shooting rampage at a Texas elementary school leaves 21 people dead.
Good evening and welcome. Civil servants are another step closer to receiving pay raises of up to 7%. As the Pay Trend Survey Committee confirmed its recommended pay hikes after a meeting with civil service unions today. But some civil service unions are calling for fairness for low-ranking workers who may receive the smallest amount of pay increase.
Others slammed the more than 7% pay rise for senior staff, saying it is way too high given the challenging economic climate amid the pandemic. Jackie Lin reports.
After a 2-year pay freeze, the Pay Trend Survey Committee today confirmed the suggested pay hikes for low to high-ranking civil servants would range from 2.04% to 7.26%.
For the civil service increase, they have 6 factors. The pay trend is only one factor. The others are the economic situation, the government's financial situation, and also the morale of the civil servant. The government should consider all this.
On that, the Pay Trend Committee also discussed with several civil servant unions. Among them was the Hong Kong Civil Servants General Union, which threw its weight behind the committee's proposal. The union says government workers don't have the flexibility in pay raises enjoyed by their counterparts in private sectors, and the appeal for the so-called iron rice bowls has diminished in recent years.
The salary of civil service is fixed at the point system without any bonus. It doesn't make sense.
The Hong Kong Senior Government Officers Association meanwhile points out that lower-ranking government workers should also enjoy a 4.55% pay rise, just as the mid-ranking ones. Still, raising the most eyebrows is the proposed 7.26% salary raise for senior government officials.
7% 極有爭議社會。
Executive Council member Regina Ip says the big pay jump is not just unrealistic, but also it could not be accepted by the wider society.
譬如話銀行啦、保險公司啦。
Human Resources consultant Alexa Chow says the calculation framework for the Pay Trend Survey should be rejigged to better reflect the city's economic situation. This as most private companies included in the survey have suffered relatively less impact from the pandemic, including banks, insurance, and telecoms firms. Jackie Lin, TVB News.
Government lifeguards can apply for 2 types of hardship allowance, starting next month at $1,040 each. Some lifeguards could get up to $2,080 per month in new allowances for 5 consecutive years. The Leisure and Cultural Services Department estimates that around 1,400 lifeguards employed by the government will get the hardship allowance. Some 500 of them are eligible for applying for both types of allowance. The LCSD said with the support of the allowance, they will be able to hire some more seasonal lifeguards to relieve the manpower shortage problem. MTR Corporation says the monitoring device of one of its trains sent out a false alarm yesterday, causing disruption on the East Rail Line service for about half an hour during the morning rush hour.
Meanwhile, the railway company is planning to discuss the fare adjustment mechanism with the government in the latter half of the year. Christy Khan reports.
Just 10 days after the cross-harbour extension of the East Rail Line went into operation, a morning rush hour service disruption occurred yesterday. The railway operator said today it believes a monitoring device on one of the trains has sent out a false alarm. The MTR's Chief Executive Officer Jacob Kemp said an inspection of the train after the incident found that it functioned normally. There was another problem that contributed to yesterday's disruption. After the train in question arrived at Admiralty Station, it was supposed to turn around and head to Shenzhen. As the train was reported to have malfunctioned, it should have gone to the turnaround siding waiting to be removed. But on that siding was another empty train which was on standby. So the malfunctioned train could not enter the siding, which caused further delays. KAM said the East Rail Line Cross Harbour extension only started operating on May 15th, and the company will keep reviewing the situation and make improvements. Meanwhile, the MTRL said it will discuss with the government the fare adjustment mechanism later this year. Res Ao-yuan, chairman of the MTRL, said the company had frozen its fares in the past 3 years, adding that the company has been adopting a transparent fare adjustment mechanism. Christy Kang, TVB News.
The city reported 251 new coronavirus infections, including 28 imported cases.
Meanwhile, the government is calling on residents to get the booster shot, as it will soon become a mandatory requirement for most residents to get into restaurants and cinemas.
One more customer who had been to the virus-hit McDonald's in Tai Kuching has been infected. The 66-year-old woman is double jabbed and tested positive 4 days after visiting the fast food eatery. The cluster has now accumulated 10 infections, with 2 more patients confirmed to carry the B8.2.12.1 variant. Another student of the St. Catherine's International Kindergarten in Kowloon Tong has come down with the virus. The pupil's family members, classmates and 5 teachers tested negative.
The new confirmed case today doesn't seem to be connected to the cases yesterday, and the student does not take the same school bus. The classroom, however, is on the same floor. We cannot rule out the possibility of transmission during the sharing of facilities.
2 more COVID patients died, bringing the total number of deaths in this COVID wave to 9,159. Meanwhile, in less than a week's time, residents aged 12 or above must have received 3 doses in order to enter premises such as restaurants and cinemas. So far, almost 6.7 million people in the city have had their first dose, while 6.3 million people are double jabbed. But only more than 3.6 million people have received a booster shot. Currently, COVID patients who have received a jab before getting infected must get the next shot 6 months after recovery. Infectious disease expert Dr. Joseph Zhang said there are at least 100 transmission chains in the community. He urged the government to shorten the period between the second and the third jab to 90 days, meaning COVID patients should be able to take the third dose 3 months after recovery.
The mainland's newly reported domestic COVID tally fell to 520, 168 fewer than the day before. The bulk of the infections are from Shanghai, where 387 cases have been recorded. As the port city slowly reopens and transport services connecting this city to other places resume in phases, crowds are flocking to train stations to leave the city. Some say they walked for 7 hours to reach the station so as to return to their hometowns. Meanwhile, the capital city, Beijing, reported 47 new cases. To facilitate testing exercises, the National Medical Insurance Bureau has set the price ceiling for each nucleic acid test at 16 yuan. The price cap will take effect on June 10th.
Members of the World Health Organization have re-elected Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus as Director General by a strong majority for another 5 years. The vote by secret ballot is seen as a formality since Tedros was the only candidate running. He has directed the WHO throughout its management of the global response to COVID-19 and withstood criticism over its multiple missteps. Under Tedros, the UN Health Agency advised against mask wearing for months and said initially that the coronavirus wasn't likely to mutate rapidly. Scientists investigating the coronavirus's origins in China said the critical probe was stalled last year after issuing a report that even Tedros acknowledged had prematurely ruled out the possibility a laboratory leak.
In the United States, an 18-year-old gunman opened fire at a Texas elementary school, killing at least 19 children and 2 adults.
Officials said the gunman went from classroom to classroom on the shooting rampage before being killed by law enforcement. Alan Bognier reports.
The assault at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas, is the deadliest in the United States since a gunman killed 20 children and 6 adults at Sandy Hook Elementary in Newtown, Connecticut in December 2012. Officials said the gunman shot and wounded his grandmother before driving to the school. He crashed his truck outside the building, then ran into the school.
The intruder is deceased, and we are not actively looking for another individual or any other suspects in this case. We definitely ask you all to keep the families that are involved in your prayers.
Hours after the attack, parents were still awaiting word on their children.
No, there's a lot of confused parents too, where they don't know where Miss Garcia's at, and that's what I'm trying to figure out. Where is she at? I haven't heard anything. I haven't got a call or anything.
The suspect, identified as Salvador Ramos, bought 2 assault rifles after he turned 18. He had hinted on social media that an attack could be coming and kids should watch out. A visibly shaken U.S. President Joe Biden urged Americans to stand up to the gun lobby, which he blames for blocking enactment of tougher gun laws.
As a nation, we have to ask, when in God's name are we going to stand up to the gun lobby? When in God's name we do what we all know in our gut needs to be done? The idea that an 18-year-old kid can walk into a gun store and buy 2 assault weapons is just wrong.
The attack in Uvalde is the deadliest school shooting in Texas history. It adds to the grim tally in the state, which has been the site of some of the deadliest shootings in the U.S. in the last 5 years. Alan Brookniat, TVB News.
A man suspected of pulling a gun and killing a stranger on a New York subway train on Sunday has been arrested by police yesterday. Police say the motive for the unprovoked attack remains a big mystery. 25-year-old Andrew Abdullah was arrested at his lawyer's office. He was charged with second-degree murder of 48-year-old Daniel Enriquez, who was fatally shot in the chest as he rode on a subway car Sunday morning. Abdullah was described as a gang member with a criminal history dating back to 2016. Police disclosed they briefly stopped him after the shooting, but they let him go because his clothes didn't match the description they were given. Still ahead on tonight's news. Russian forces seek to encircle Ukrainian troops in 2 eastern cities. New fleet of police armored vehicles.
Welcome back to TVB News. Heavy fighting is being reported in the Donbas region, the eastern industrial heartland in Ukraine that Russian forces are intent on seizing.
And in the ruined port city of Mariupol, which has seen some of the worst suffering of the invasion, more horrors are being uncovered. In Ukraine's east, Russian troops took over an industrial town that hosts a thermal power station and intensified efforts to encircle and capture the city of Severodonetsk. Inside the city, rescuers are scrambling to get people out of danger.
You know, it's hell first, everyday shelling. Second, a lot of death. Third, humanitarian problems.
Aid workers say Russian forces are all around the city.
It's practically surrounded. There are tanks. There are we can see trucks from the army being deployed around the city. So it seems very clear that, to me, it's about to fall.
Workers digging through the rubble of an apartment building in Mariupol found 200 bodies in the basement. Residents had refused to collect the corpses, and Russian authorities had abandoned the site. An advisor to the mayor did not say when they were discovered, but the sheer number of victims makes it one of the deadliest known attacks of the war. Yesterday, top Russian officials acknowledged the Russian advance has been slower than expected. Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu said Russia was deliberately slowing its offensive to allow civilians to evacuate, while a top security official said Moscow was not chasing deadlines in the 3-month-old war. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky marked the comments as pathetic lies designed to hide a disastrous campaign. In his nightly address, he said the Russians couldn't think of any better explanation for their lack of progress than to say that's what they planned. Hungary's government is set to announce new measures as it assumes emergency powers in response to problems stemming from the war in Ukraine. Prime Minister Viktor Orban's government is facing soaring inflation and a ballooning deficit. Orban has gradually increased his powers during his 12 years in office, drawing criticism from the European Union and rights groups over what they say is an erosion of democratic checks and balances. South Korea says it appears North Korea conducted an experiment with a detonation device in preparation for its 7th nuclear test after U.S. President Joe Biden left Asia for Washington. In response, the U.S. and South Korea held combined live fire drills, including surface-to-air missile tests.
President Xi Jinping spoke with United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights Michelle Bachelet in a video call. She told Bachelet that China has embarked successfully on a path of human rights development that conforms to the trend of the times and suits its own national conditions. She added China should not completely copy the models of other countries, which would otherwise bring unbearable consequences. Bachelet said her meeting with Xi and other officials had been a valuable opportunity to speak directly about human rights issues. The meeting comes just 2 days after Bachelet met Foreign Minister Wang Yi. She's the first top UN human rights official to visit China in 17 years.
After 20 years of planning, construction, and delays, the latest addition to London's tube system, the Elizabeth Line, finally opened yesterday. Transport enthusiasts gathered in an attempt to be on the first train when these services began early Tuesday. London Mayor Sadiq Khan was one of those who traveled on the first train. He called the line a prime example of the energy, ambition, and boundary-breaking spirit that defines our incredible city. Then the fire alarm went off. The false alarm triggered an evacuation at Paddington Station just hours into the service. The new line links Reading to the west with Essex to the east. All three of the line's branches are expected to be fully integrated in a year's time.
The Legislative Council's Public Works Subcommittee has approved an additional $400 million for the LegCo Complex expansion project. The funding plan will now go to LegCo's Finance Committee. During today's meeting, some lawmakers criticized the government for its inaccurate estimate of the construction cost, even though all but one of the attending legislators voted in favor of the additional funding. The government said the unexpected extra cost was due to the necessity to carry out nighttime construction work for 3 years.
When we work on our estimates, there was no such construction in the market adopting such a method. We really do not have figures telling us how much nighttime construction work would cost. Therefore, we were not able to come up with market estimate.
Police say a new fleet of armored vehicles will enter service next month. The fourth-generation police armored vehicles, dubbed saber-toothed tigers, were manufactured on the mainland. Apart from having stronger protection compared with those currently in use, the new vehicles are equipped with video recorders as well as launchers for different types of low-lethality ammunition. The tendering process was completed last October. The police force's current fleet of Unimog armored vehicles has been in service for over 10 years. Police say the vehicles have premature wear and tear because of frequent use during the anti-government protests in 2019.
A German surfer's epic ride 19 months ago has been officially recognized as a Guinness World Record. Sebastian Studner conquered an 86-foot high wave in Nazaré, Portugal, at the infamous big wave break in that country in October of 2020. After his ride was analyzed and measured, the record was officially verified during the World Surf League's Big Wave Awards as the largest wave surfed by a male athlete.
I had a vision that I will never forget, which was, 86-foot wave lining up in front of me and stretching, 100 meters in front of me, and I saw the entire section as I was accelerating down the face of the wave. It was crazy.
And that's the news. Thanks for watching.
Good night.